So hello, and welcome to In My Experience. And I'm Piperlyne, and I'm with Sonya Lee.
Hello.
And we are here on our last podcast for 2020. So, pop open champagne if you've got it, or take a drink of your favorite tea, whatever it is. But yes, unfortunately, just because the clock turns 12:01 January 1st, 2021 doesn't mean everything is gone, right?
Or better.
Or better. Yeah, we still have carryover and experiences and so on and so forth. But Sonia and I were just chatting about, what the new year might mean for us, what we might choose for it, what it might mean to you guys. And all the things that 2020 brought up that we may not have dealt with in our lives.
2020 brought up so much for us to deal with. And one of the big things, too, that we've seen come up as a sort of a repeating theme, if you will, and really in 2020 it was a theme du jour.
Pick a theme, any theme.
Right? Was, shadow aspects.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the shadow before. We've talked about some of the archetypes before in the past. And the hits just keep on coming. So I and Piperlyne thought, with our own experiences, because this is in my experience.
That's right.
We'd share a little bit about that and offer some insights, too, if you're unfamiliar with shadow work, of what it can look like, how you can work through it, and not to be so hard on yourself, because we all have the shadow. Mm-hmm. And only the shadow knows.
And sometimes the shadow knows too much.
Way too much. And the shadow will just sit there and look at you unblinkingly until you're ready to deal with him or her.
Or her. Yes, absolutely. And unblinkingly is the thing. I mean, and our shadow parts will wait for us.
As long
as it takes.
And until it's been enough.
Right.
And then it must be faced. And this is when you see the outward explosion of the inward tension, mm-hmm. or pressure that has been, like, I like to think of all those things that you don't like about yourself, that you don't like in the world that you see around you, and so you want to kill it, run from it, hide, push it down, pushing it down, like you're trying to get a lid on a box, and you're just going to mm-hmm. keep shoving on it until it stays shut.
Packing your suitcase. Hello.
Yes, that's a great
Sit your butt down on the top of that suitcase while you're reaching around to zip the zipper. I don't know anything about that.
Not at all. It will fit.
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
That, I think, has been something that has been for a long time. We were talking earlier about Carl Jung and his works with the shadow. I have a quote from him. To confront a person with his own shadow is to show him his own light. Right.
That's a beautiful statement.
It's
and it's actually true.
It is.
It's actually true. But yeah, dancing through the shadow does not make you feel like light.
Here's another one from him, though. Maybe like this. Can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side if I am to be whole.
No, I agree. Absolutely.
So I like to think of him as like, he says something kind, and then you go, oh, nice. And then when you lean in close, it smack you upside the head with some truth. Because that's how we learn. We've talked about this before. It'd be lovely if we learned lovingly, gently. But we don't.
We don't, no.
We got to have a, butt kicking. And then we learn.
Some of my favorite 2x4s just lined up in the history of my life. Right. But when it comes to shadow work, and it comes to addressing it, being aware of it, healing it, if there are things that need to be healed, that it's hard for us to do in great part because of our culture. And not just us here sitting in, U.S. white person culture, whatever that is, but it's humanity.
Right.
We have to do certain things to make sure that we can be in community and be and live and so on and so forth. But we're never really taught about what to do with that stuff that goes against community and social.
And how we handle and address the things that we are shown or taught, because there's a lot of shadow that is inherent. I show up this way because my mother showed up this way, because her mother showed up this way.
Trauma related.
And we continue to perpetuate this cycle of falsity. And as women, and I'm not one really big, I do believe that globally, statistically, women are still the most discriminated on the planet. And, it's part of the duality. But I don't tend to play that card a lot. That being said, I also recognize in my life where I have rejected the expectations of a girl of a woman because of those societal shadows and things that were put there and forced there. And you're not a good girl if you don't do this or that. And while I say that I rejected a lot of those, it didn't mean that I wasn't still impacted, hurt, and shifted internally because of those. I could see that it was bullshit. Didn't mean that I didn't still feel rejected by my community because I chose to do something different. And hey, and if you're here in this incarnation, it's probably to help to break some of these human-based constructs. Because if you understand spirituality at all, we all come from the same drop of water.
Right.
So the shadow is within and without. And it is a beautiful and integral part of self.
Right. Right. And it's not, my understanding of this is not to banish it either.
No, it can't not be eliminated.
Right. It can't be eliminated. It needs to be understood. So, like, there are times where I am lazy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I am. And I would say, and that has to do with, with just being lazy, but it also has to do with procrastination. And so that would be part of my shadow.
And what if I also told you that also had part to do with your trauma?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So there is, and the thing is, what many of us want to do, in my experience, what I have seen is many of us want to do, first of all, we don't want to acknowledge that this is a truth. And then when we do, then we have to berate ourselves for actually feeling that way.
Yep.
And which, of course, just perpetuates it.
Yeah. Because anything that is not, that is inferior or evil or unacceptable, we judge those things. They become our shadow. And then what we see outside of ourselves that we reject, that we judge. Also, that's projection of shadow.
Well, you mentioned that the spiritual teachers or the New Age teachers, right? Just about every single one that is out there has people who complain or get, what's the word? Are upset that they are not this perfection of whatever that they believe them to be.
Yes.
And then judge them for that.
Yes.
And so, we've talked about guru too. So that's a whole interesting concept with having a guru and the problems that there can be with a guru, and understanding that anyone that talks to you standing here in physical body is in physical body.
Also.
Therefore, they are human.
Also.
Therefore, they have shadow.
Also.
Dun, da, da, da.
Hope that clears it up.
Yeah, so the expectation that anyone that you look up to, anybody, it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be, it could be a boss, it could be a religious leader, a spiritual leader, they all have a shadow side. Now, depending on the work that they've done internally, has a lot to do with how active it is and how harmful
Yes.
it can be,
And
right?
how harmful they can be.
Yes.
Because they have allowed their ego to create a spiritual bypass for their own shadow work.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
It just is.
It just is. And it's, and the wheel turns.
and so you just know. And how do you become aware of those things? Because you have done your shadow work. When you have done your shadow work, or in the process of doing it,
Yes.
or even can acknowledge that it resides within you,
Yes.
if that's where you are, then it is easier to do so with others.
Mm-hmm.
Without judgment.
Right.
I mean, you can...
Or being triggered.
Right. You can look at someone and say that behavior isn't appropriate. I don't want that in my life. Whatever. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about shaming someone for having a shadow, including yourself. Man, we love to shame ourselves.
Oh, yes. So there are shadow archetypes, and here are just some. We've talked about a few on here. The victim, the prostitute, the saboteur, the victim. I say that already?
Yeah. Victim, prostitute, saboteur, child.
Child. Thank you. The child. There's also the sorcerer, the dictator, the shadow witch, the addict, the idiot, the trickster, the destroyer, the slave, the shadow mother, the hag, and the hermit.
I don't think I know the shadow mother.
Oh, the shadow mother's interesting.
Yeah.
I actually looked at that one.
Yeah.
The other one, and this I found on lonerwolf.com, was in her experience, she has 13 shadow archetypes that she has seen. And I thought, I like these because they weren't just titles. She actually gave a little bit of definition. So, if I may, for example, the egotistical shadow. This displays the following characteristics: arrogance, egocentricity, pompousness, inconsiderationness, self-indulgence, narcissism, excessive pride. The neurotic shadow: paranoia, obsessiveness, suspiciousness, finicky, demanding, compulsive behavior. Untrustworthy shadow: secretive, impulsive, frivolous, irresponsible, deceitful, unreliable. Emotionally unstable: moody, melodramatic, weepy, over-emotional, impulsive, changeable. Controlling shadow: suspicious, jealous, possessive, bossy, obsessive. The cynical shadow: negative, overcritical, patronizing, resentful, cantankerous. The wraithful shadow: ruthless, vengeful, bitchy, quick-tempered, quarrelsome. The rigid shadow: uptight, intolerant, racist, sexist, elitist, homophobic, obstinate, uncompromising, inflexible, narrow-minded. 3 more. The glib shadow: superficial, cunning, inconsistent, sly, crafty. The cold shadow: emotionally detached, distant, indifferent, uncaring, unexcited. I've been dealing with the cold shadow a little bit.
Girl, I had some work there too. Years, yeah.
The perverted shadow: okay, maybe more than 3. Masochistic, lewd, sadistic, vulgar, libidinous. The cowardly shadow: weak-willed, passive, timid, fearful. And the immature shadow: puerile, childish, illogical, simple-minded, and vacuous.
Vacuous.
Thank you. So I wanted to share those ones too because it gave us adjectives and characteristics so that you could see that those characteristics can sometimes be how the shadow shows up. So if you're paying attention, you can catch yourself. I'm not even saying you need to do anything with it.
Right.
Because the beauty of the shadow work, again, is not to, sit on that suitcase. It's to merely observe
Right.
and acknowledge. Because if that's who you are, then that's who you are. And knowing that you can be that way doesn't mean that you are that way.
Right.
It just means that you can be that way.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just like you can be loving and kind and generous and trustworthy and trusting and expressive and joyful and playful and all the others that would be the, antonyms to those we just described. Because it's in balance. Right. When it's in balance, then your shadow's happy. It gets what it needs. Sometimes, we've talked about this before, sometimes we need to be bitchy.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we need to be, sly, cunning. I don't ever see an excuse for whining, though. I'm sorry. Anyway, I digress.
Well, that would probably be because you and I have are similar and maybe a different personality type.
Yes.
Might find use for that.
Yell, scream, bitch, moan. Don't whine. That's a whiny moan.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, that's okay. I digress. But we need to lighten it up a little bit, though.
For everyone now is clear on that.
Right.
I'm sure we appreciate it. Yes.
So, knowing the shadow archetypes is sort of your first step. And then the second one, I think that's really just right there in your face, ready to be discovered, is she got a hair.
Excuse me, I'm drinking tea, and there was like a hair there. All right, go ahead.
I love that. That was at 22:11 too. That was beautiful.
Oh, interesting.
So I lost my train of thought, and that's okay because that can happen sometimes when you're doing this.
Sometimes we can be flighty and airheaded too.
Anyhow, the next work is projection. I did remember that. So the things that irritate you might be a projection of something that you don't like within yourself.
Right.
And we talk about projection in different terms in the spiritual community because oftentimes we will say, well, it probably had nothing to do with you. It was just them projecting their own issues onto you.
Right.
And blaming you. Yes. And finger point back at you too.
And yeah, and that's why, some of you may have heard this quote, "It's none of my business what you think of me." Mm-hmm. And why it's so important to take the feedback that you get from other people with a grain of salt. And I remember when I was teaching face-to-face, and whatever the class was, the feedback that I got was equal, she's cold. Yeah. And she is the most warm, amazing, and supportive teacher I have ever met. And the thing is, I read this, and while I think as feedback as a teacher, I think it's important that you pay attention how you come off, right?
Sure.
This is important information, but I also knew in reading it that both of them were absolutely true.
Sure.
And it had to do with where they were coming from and me.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely can be cold.
Yes.
Yes, without a doubt.
And, well, you're right.
And I can be nurturing and supportive and creating a safe space. And I can do all of those. So both of them were true.
And I think you're right, because it only, while that is true of you, it is really more about them. And I know from the other side of that too, because the other side of the shadow too is that over-attentiveness, over-appreciation, over-love. Obsessive, right? We talked about obsessiveness earlier. You can be so enamored with someone that your shadow aspect gets triggered in that, and you don't see what's not good for you, or you don't see them in their, they poop too, okay? They poop too. That's Everybody poops.
Yes. And it's a literary classic right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Check it out. Go to the library and ask them. They'll get it for you.
That's right.
And that is the way that it can also show up for people. You'll see people that just continue to have one bad relationship after another. And, wow, that's just such bad luck. Is it, though? What is being, fed? How is that ego, not the ego, that shadow, although the ego's there, but we give the ego too much importance. Although we also don't need to put it in a suitcase with the shadow stuff and try to
No.
force it to close.
No.
The ego has its purpose. It all has a purpose.
It has a functional purpose to our experience.
We decided to go camping on planet Earth. And we brought everything that we needed to sustain and survive.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can be the most tender-hearted animal lover in the world. And if a bear was coming after my son, I would pull out my shotgun and I would shoot it if I couldn't scare it off with the first blast.
Absolutely.
Fully prepared, like.
Absolutely.
And so,
without a doubt,
that is, just, I think, another great example of why, the light in the dark is so important. Another quote, because I love them. I found so many good ones this morning. This one, though, is, who has not at one time or another felt a sourness, wrath, selfishness, envy, pride, which he could not tell what to do with or how to bear, rising up in him without his consent, casting a blackness over all his thoughts? It is exceedingly good and beneficial to us to discover this dark, disoriented fire of our soul, because when we rightly known and when rightly dealt with, it can as well be made the foundation of heaven as it is of hell. William Law.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Right?
Right.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, we all have these qualities that we won't let anyone else see, including ourselves. And when we face those qualities, we become our life's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We become our life's purpose. And if anyone's wondering what's my life purpose, I got a hint for y'all for 2021. Are you ready?
I am ready.
It's you.
Strapped in. It's me.
You are your life's purpose. That's it.
I think that sounds amazing. I think that's always been true.
We just had to get to here to know it. And that is when everyone is thinking back on 2020, what was the bad? What was the really, really, really bad?
Mm-hmm.
What was the worst? It wasn't lost on me. In fact, I was listening to astrologer Rick Merlin Levine. By the way.
Yes, Merlin.
And they did like a little 2020 Christmas Eve fire chat, whatever. And he shared a story called Nicholas Was. It's by Neil Gaiman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 100 words long.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really dark. And so I read it at Christmas, right before we did our white elephant exchange. Because it gave a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What if Santa Claus wasn't the jolly old elf that came around and gifted all the girls and boys with treats, but instead it was his punishment, his hell, to have to work with little troll-like creatures that made things that couldn't communicate with him, to be isolated and alone except for that one night of the year when he is forced to go out amongst the frozen sleeping children and deliver those presents.
How unfortunate.
Right? Look it up. Nicholas Was. There's even a Vimeo you can find on it. It's pretty
Interesting.
Yeah, 100 words. 100 words to drive a point home. And of course, that's what they all said. This is, well, it's kind of dark for Christmas. And I said, it just gives you a little different perspective.
Right.
If it's not Jolly St. Nick, then it could be, enslavement, punishment. So I found that very, very interesting, because I also thought about all of those that weren't celebrating here in America Christmas yesterday, or were celebrating it as a bittersweet, because they either couldn't be with loved ones or they could no longer be with loved ones. So much has shifted and changed. And again, we talk a lot about what we see, the divisiveness that's going on in the world. And even within that, I think it brings such stark, glaring obviousness that there is salt and pepper. This is not unilateral. And really, it's not even bilateral. It's like multi-dimensional, multilateral.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're just focusing on the bi.
We'll just focus on the salt or the pepper.
Right. And right now, we're looking at the shadow, which I guess we could call the pepper.
I guess.
I personally like pepper. And it just made me think about, in the terms of different perspectives can bring different insights.
Right.
And sometimes when you can step out of your own perspective, you can gain new insights.
Right.
And sometimes when you really examine the justification or the validation of your own perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you can grow.
Well, I think one of the things that I did naturally, but was reinforced through the life coaching training that I went through, was learning how to try on a thought. Just try it on.
Yes.
Right? You're not attaching to it. You're not saying that this is true, that this is me, that this is the way it has to be, but trying it on.
Mm-hmm.
And so being like, okay, well, choosing a shadow. What if I am egotistical? What if I am? What would that mean? How would that show up? And the thing that has worked best for me through all the years of doing this is I get a sense in my body of what is true and what is not true. And when something is deeply true, I get tears immediately. And that's true for me or anyone else if I hit something that just resonates as a very deep truth.
Yes.
But it's through years of practicing this. And it's something that literally we can play with. Also, it has been my experience that we have a tendency when it comes to change, we have a tendency to wait until it's in our face, live or die. Our entire world is balanced on this one piece of experience. And so it's fucking terrifying because we can screw everything up here in this moment. But if we have been playing with it, and it's just, these are the things that I do with my mind. So for anyone who might be interested, this is what I do on my off time.
Yes.
I look at something and I say, okay, so what if that was true?
Mm-hmm.
What would that mean for me?
Right.
And if I get the sense in my body that it's not true, then I'm fine with that. And I set it aside. And, but play with it, because when it's just an idea that's out there that's not impacting my life, there's no heaviness attached to it, right?
Yes.
This isn't about whether I'm right or wrong, or I'm screwing up my life, or I'm going to make it better. This is just simply going, I wonder if that could be true. And then that's like building your muscles so that when the big, heavy stuff happens,
Yes.
you have created trust and experience and wisdom within yourself. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's what I do for fun on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, some might say doesn't sound all that fun. However, being in pain is less fun.
Being pain is less fun.
And there are a lot of things that you can use to mask that pain, to bypass that pain, to shut that pain down. The pain is still there. Mm-hmm. The shadow work allows for you to completely accept and acknowledge it for what it is, and that's it. Like, don't make a whole story about it.
Right.
Now you got another shadow to work on when you're making a story about it, right? But that's how it works. And one of the things that they talk about with approaching the shadow and doing shadow work, and I think this is important, which is why I want to share it. Again, this was from Loner Wolf, is have you practiced self-love yet? Mm-hmm. Because if you haven't, then, shadow work really might be too much for you.
Right.
Because if you don't have that self-love, then, and that self-compassion, it's just going to be, hey, let's beat up on me night.
Right.
Instead of, let me sit with these interesting thoughts that come to my mind that could be true. I don't know yet.
Right.
I need to sit with this and
or
try
feelings
it on.
that come up in my body.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely.
So if you're at that point where you're like, I'm not sure if I've got the self-love, start with the mirror work.
So talk about that.
That's one of the safest ways, I think, to do some shadow work.
Because I've never done it.
Oh.
I know it.
Oh, yeah.
But I've never done it.
Well, I don't know how they do it out there in the real world. How I do it,
Sonya's mirror work right
Sonya's
here.
mirror work, is to stand in front of a mirror and say however many number that my people tell me needs to be said to myself that are loving, supportive, empowering, kind, and polite.
Polite.
Well, I add that, but no, if I love you bitches is the way you speak to yourself, then that's your level of politeness.
Whatever you got.
We tend to be so unkind to ourselves, so that's why I throw politeness in there.
Gotcha.
If you're polite, that triggers your brain. What was I trained? What does polite mean? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Be that to yourself now. Because people, I was always so surprised. Now, this tends to be more men than women, and yet, I know there are women that do it too, that won't even look at themselves in the mirror.
Mm.
They're getting ready, and I don't look in the mirror. You don't look in your mirror when you brush your teeth or comb your hair. You don't look in the, what do I need to look in the mirror for? I know how to comb my hair. I don't need to watch myself brush my teeth. All right, I guess I'm a little mirror obsessed. How else am I going to discover that my eyebrows are growing together into a unibrow if I don't look in the mirror on occasion? I'm busy. I don't pay attention to that stuff, right?
Interesting.
Yes. And so that to me makes me want to go on inquiry and say, well, do you have a problem with looking at yourself in the mirror?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do understand the mirror's purpose. The mirror's got a job to do just like you.
Reflect yourself back to you.
You're denying the mirror the beauty of its purpose here on Earth.
Oh, that's terrible.
I know.
That is
I'm kidding.
terrible.
And yet, sometimes you have to kind of lighten it up, because the other thing that I notice when you start these inquiries, people tend to get a little tense.
Right.
Because and I know, if they're not looking at themselves in the mirror, there's something going on here. And I don't
Right.
buy the whole, I'm a guy, it doesn't matter what I look like. Shadow.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. I'm calling that one out. And yeah, I don't care the age.
Especially when it's right in front of your face.
Right in front of your face.
I mean, if you are, if you don't have a mirror in your bathroom, which would be weird in our world,
Yes.
but if you didn't,
Yes.
then it would make sense why you
Right.
would not look at yourself while you brush your teeth.
There are so many stories in history. I'm an avid reader, and this made me think of one. So many stories in history where people didn't have mirrors
Right.
and caught a reflection of themselves
Mm-hmm.
in a still pond, in something, piece of glass reflecting black, in a photograph. I remember my grandmother talking about some of the photos of some of my great grandparents and how. And I said to her, why do they always look like that in all the pictures? I was like, they don't smile, they don't pose.
Right.
This was such an oddity to them. And, I have a Native American line. And so there was a great deal of discomfort also
Right.
in being photographed.
Well, it was like, back in the day, it was like a once in a lifetime thing, maybe twice.
Yes, to
So
see yourself.
Yeah.
So maybe we've become a little mirror obsessed. I don't know,
It's convenience. It's convenience.
It's that spectrum though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone being so intrigued by their own reflection to someone being so repelled by their own reflection. That's the beauty of the shadow work. It can be just that small. It doesn't have to be, I've been lying about who I am for my whole life.
Right. I mean, that is shadow work.
Sure, it's in that too.
But yeah, it does not have to be like that at all.
It can be just the simple, I'm not good enough.
Strange
I'm not,
awareness.
I don't have compassion for myself. I don't treat myself in a non-judgmental way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we project out to others, a lot of what we say about others, is also a reflection of what we don't like within ourselves.
Right.
And it's just being shown to us. And there's been some situations for me this year with the shifts and changes where I came in under the impression that I was doing this for this reason,
Mm-hmm.
only to discover that there was also some healing work in that for me.
Right.
Not just the healing work I was offering, but the healing work that I was going to be uncovering for myself through that process of assistance.
Right.
And I was not happy about it. And yet there it was.
Why? Because you thought you'd done it already?
Oh, I just didn't know. And that's
Gotcha.
the other part of it. Sometimes things come up and we didn't even know that it was an issue.
Right.
Until it became an issue. And so, it creates that nice, lovely, lifelong opportunity. We don't want to get bored while we're here. I think you told me about that myself one time, which I still kind of disagree with that. I can't believe that I really was that afraid that I'd be bored down here, that I created all of this to keep me entertained. Maybe.
Whatever.
So when you do the shadow work, okay, we talked about don't do this if you have low self-worth or self-loathing. Let's do some mirror work. Let's do some, loving, kind words to yourself. Oh, and let me go back to that real quick because I got a little distracted there. So let's say, just to make it easy, because indecisiveness can be a way to get out of doing things, that you have to, for the next, how many days we got left in this year?
5.
5 days. For the next 5 days, between now and January 1st, you're going to look in the mirror and say 10. Yes, because we're doing this on a condensed version. 10 loving, supportive, kind things to yourself about yourself.
Okay.
Just go for it. Good morning, beautiful. You look fantastic. You're so clever, too. And I love how you put the cap back on the toothbrush when you get your toothpaste and you don't leave it all gunky, because that's not kind to other people that come behind you. It can be anything, but they have to be kind and positive. And you have to look yourself in the eye, in the mirror, while you're doing it.
All right.
And you can't break eye contact. It sounds so easy.
Yeah.
Don't hate me. Don't send me nasty emails. Just do it. I did it too.
Just do your work.
I understand how horrible it is. I hated the person that made me do it.
Yeah.
Until I got comfortable with it. And then now I can roll up in the morning, look at myself in the eye and go, hello, gorgeous. How you doing, you amazing soul, you? Not every day. Most days.
Most days.
Most days. So you need to make some time to do your shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to shift and adjust really quickly. Great. I also think, though, that it's important that you take the time. Sometimes we want to just go and learn something new, or go get a reading, or go do some healing and let someone else, that's spiritual bypassing of your own shadow work. Sometimes you got to sit in it.
Right. I mean, there are definitely times when, for me, I know that there are times, I get it. I hear my people, I get the sense, you need help with this.
Mm-hmm.
You need help with this piece. You've
Yes.
done this part on your own.
Yes.
And you need help with this.
Yes.
And after the many years, I trust it completely, 100%. I don't question it at all.
Yes.
Sonya and I have been talking about shadow work for a while.
Mm-hmm.
This is an ongoing conversation for us. I had an interesting situation come up, and with no real reason as to why. I wasn't looking for anything other than I am looking to change things in my life. And
I think you were looking for rest, actually, at the time. Anyhow, I'm sorry.
I'm almost always looking for rest. But, and there has been, it's been about 3 years where step by step, the things that I had in my life were taken from me. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in the sense that that option was no longer available to me, so I had to find something else. So I know that can, and I want to, it's not scary. It's a good thing. I see it as a good thing because I wasn't happy with where I was. So creating space to bring in new things.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on. 2020, of course, was, the mama of it all.
I like how you say that.
Is that the dark mother or whatever it was?
Shadow mother.
Shadow mother. So it was the mama of it all. But so I'm laying just to go to sleep. And my son is in bed and I'm laying there. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but I see, for those of you who don't know, I see and feel and hear energies outside of myself. And from different places, such as guides, angels. So anyway, I'm laying there in bed and I hear someone exhale. And I'm like, excuse me? and I know exactly where it's coming from. And I just kind of look up and I don't see anything physically with my eyes because that's not how I work. But I closed my eyes and there was a shadow of a woman. And I'm like, why? So the first thing that I do, because this is my space,
right?
And I am hardcore.
She's already done more of a kindness than I would have in the moment. Anyhow,
I am hardcore. Defend my space, protect my space. You are allowed in my space because I have given you permission to be there. Period. And this is for all types of energies. So anyway, I'm like, okay, you need to go.
Yeah.
And we don't even need to have a discussion. Right. Energy will disappear. And so I'm doing my things and she's just like, no, and I've done this for years, right? So after my third attempt of trying something else to remove this energy from my space, I said, okay, so obviously we need to have a conversation. Who are you? Okay. And there was no sense of danger. There was no sense of danger or harm. So I'm just like, who are you? And she just kind of looked at me and she said, I'm your shadow self. And I'm like, oh, seriously? So this is not something I've ever experienced. Once again, not something I was looking for. But it's not something I'd ever experienced, having a very, very specific, strong energy with boundaries, calling them, they're my shadow self. So I said, so we need to talk. And she's like, yes.
When you have a moment, dear.
I mean, it was all very calm. The energy, it was just very matter of fact. Mm-hmm. Yes, we need to talk. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go sleep now because I'm tired. Yes. She's like, that's fine. I'm like, okay, great. So then the next day I have a conversation with Sonya. I'm sitting here thinking about this. I'm like, okay, so what's going to happen? So the next day I lay down and go to sleep. And she's right there. I feel her the entire time. Not intrusive, just waiting.
Yes.
And I'm like, all right.
I took her glasses off right now. I'm just like totally there.
I'm like, okay, so talk to me. What are we doing? Why are we here? She's like, well, we need to talk about the fact that you self-sabotage. I'm like, what? This is shadow self-sabotage, huge shadow work. And because before she said that, I sit here in my mind, I'm going through, all the things that could be considered shadow. I'm like, sure. Envy, lazy, confusion, think I know everything, egocentric, I went through everything. And she's like, no, you did that. No, that's integrated. No, that's covered. No, that's part of you. You acknowledge that. And I'm like, what? Okay, what? And she's like, self-sabotage. And that is literally not something I've ever sat with because I never felt the need. And so I'm like, okay, let's talk. And so she brought back, I had this memory, spontaneous memory of when I was a teenager and I was a cheerleader. And this teeny little school that I went to, we had 4 on our squad, somehow raised enough money for us to go to go away cheerleading camp. So it was like a 3-night, 4-day thing.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, all the other cheerleading groups were much larger than us, more experienced than us. But we were all friends and we were working together. And at the end of the camp, we had to do a cheer that we made up on our own based off of what we'd learned. And I was the gymnast of the group. So I would do the flips and flops and the cartwheels and all of that. So we worked something out, and we were working on it. And out of the 4 of us, one of the group, she got sick, like she was throwing up, sick. So she wasn't going to be able to participate. So it was 3.
Yes.
It was 3. And I got scared. And I got scared, and I was sure that I was going to make a fool out of myself. I was embarrassed because we were only 3 people, and everyone else had at least 2 to 3 times more people in their squad, which means they could do more than us, right? With just us 3 at the teeny little high school. And I got scared. And so while practicing my flips and flops and cartwheels and all of that, I landed weird. I have rubber ankles. Now I have more like glass ankles, but then I had rubber ankles. And so I was landing weird on my ankles always and twisting them. And so I landed weird and I hurt it, but it wasn't anything serious. And then the fear came in and came in and came in. And so the day of, I was so scared that I lied and I said that I had hurt myself so badly that I couldn't participate in the cheer.
Wow.
And so then they went ahead and did it with just the 2 of them. Bless their brave, courageous hearts. And so, I mean, this is just a thing, right? There was no animosity. There was no anger. There was no hatred. There was nothing. And that's probably part of it too, because I am so honest and I was so out of integrity and I lied to them. I never told anyone. And I pretended that I was hurt because I was scared. And this was a wound that I gave myself. Right. It wasn't anyone else that did anything. Right. I created it in myself. And even as I talk about it, I can feel the emotion. And it wasn't the situation. It was what I did to myself. Right. And so what I became aware of through this process is that and if you have been listening to these, you know that I have been dealing with physical pain and trying to work on some physical health and eating and all of that, right? So what I became aware of is that this thing was so far out of who I was, that it made such a large impact that it is carried through decades to where I sit now. And if I'm trying to understand where some of the physical pain in my body is coming from, it comes from that. Yeah. I insulted myself so much that it has carried through. Wow. And so, I mean, that is amazing. I am so grateful for this awareness. And I also got very clearly that this was something, because it is so deep and has been sitting around for decades, that I'm going to need some help clearing it. So I have an appointment with someone to work as a anchor for me to go through it. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And thank you for sharing that. That's a big story to share there. It makes perfect sense. You know, teenagers feel angsty as it is. And, you know, I think about my own teenage life and probably, you know, created a few shadow anchors myself. I don't know. And that the self-deceit is so, you know, that, and why? Because it's self-preservation. Right. Because the alternative is too painful. Right. So we're just going to say, and this is where ego steps in to save us. Any number of things could have happened to you if you had been forced to try to do that. And this is one of the things I've struggled with myself, is I just push through it. I just force through it. And I look at how many times that maybe it wasn't the right thing for me to do.
See, and I am one normally just to push through too, and to force through.
But I wonder where that comes from.
I don't know.
You know, and is that a denial of my own frailty or my own whatever? Again, rabbit hole, wormhole, same.
Grab a line and jump in.
So, these different things, that we've talked about here today. One of the things I want to talk about are the benefits of the shadow. Because when you accept and acknowledge your shadow, when you make your shadow a part of your life, there are benefits to it. A deeper love and acceptance of yourself.
Well,
we talked about that right now.
Wholeness.
More clarity. I mean, that to me, I think has been a big one too, because I have allowed myself to see some aspects of myself that I don't particularly care for in a non-judgmental way. And as I used to joke years ago with people, you don't have to tell me where I'm wrong or how I'm wrong, because I can tell you everything that's wrong with me. So, and I found that this was a shadow way of beating anyone that wanted to hurt me to the punch.
Right, absolutely.
If you're going to
self-protective.
Oh yeah. But there was some ownership in that too, right? Like I had to say it. What I found was it became obsessive and self-protective.
Right.
It wasn't just enough to go, oh no, I know that I can be, loud and obnoxious and, in everybody's business and yada, yada, yada. No, if you want to tell me about my problems here, let me tell you. Because I know. And also, like you, being in integrity, being in authenticness. These are good things, right? Until it becomes the next crutch that keeps you. And when you're clever, and you can learn the rules, then you can learn how to work those rules to your own benefit.
Oh, absolutely.
And that works especially well if you're lazy.
Wait, I resemble that.
Right? Now, here's the beauty of that, though, and there's a benefit to the laziness, too, which is why I mentioned that. Because most of the time, we're not truly lazy anyway.
Right.
Like, true, total laziness, there's no thought or guilt or anything about it. You're just in it.
Right.
Doing nothing.
True.
Right?
That is true, yes.
But most people that berate themselves as being lazy are because they never just truly stop. And this is something I have been so guilty of. Take a day off, still work.
Right.
But I'm not working like I work.
Well, and this is actually absolutely a thing, too, when you own your own business.
Yes.
And so, because it's very easy to work all the time.
I had to put in a fictitious appointment in my calendar just
I
so
have
that
done that.
I wouldn't self-sabotage my own day off.
I have done that. Yes, absolutely.
So, again, benefits of this is being okay with that. Looking at that and going, yeah, today I'm just going to say, screw it all. But you got to really say screw it all, and you got to be good with it. And that can be really uncomfortable sometimes. I spent years, I don't do it anymore, and I'm so glad when I finally became aware that I did this, it really almost made me want to cry.
Yeah.
Sitting down, watching a movie, and about every 3 to 3.5 minutes, having a little mini anxiety attack going, what am I supposed to be doing now? Oh, did I forget that? Because I was such a fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
Rarely did I freeze.
Right.
I think someone made that one up.
Excuse me, I'd be running or I'd be punching.
Right. No, I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure that's the next generation. Anyway, that realization that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing
Right.
in this moment.
Right.
And please use that. Say that to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you've given yourself permission to relax and you find yourself not relaxing, remind yourself, oh, we're relaxing. And this is...
Oh, yes, I've chosen to relax during this period of time.
And this can help you.
Mm-hmm.
It really can. And this is the shadow talking to you. That was my shadow telling me, girlfriend, you wouldn't know how to relax if it hit you on the top of the head and rendered you unconscious. Because I didn't.
Right.
Right? And there's a million reasons why I didn't care. I didn't care about all the baggage that I've drug around my whole life that created this false belief of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want to have that contradiction within myself anymore. And so the way that I resolved that was by sitting with the uncomfortable bits and saying, fine, I got all day. I'm going to sit here till you're ready to talk. Now, you may not have all day, but you do have time to be a little more observant when you get triggered by something, when someone irritates you. Just take a second in that irritation to sort of halt us, interrupt us, and say, why am I irritated right now? That single question puts your brain on notice.
Right.
We're not running on autopilot anymore, kid. I just saw what happened. I don't know what the hell it was, but there was a blip on the screen. Okay? So just start there. And then if you want, if anything comes to you, maybe you jot it down in a little book or a journal or on your phone in your little notepad. Why is that important? Well, because as you go through time, and I'm terrible about journaling. Horrible. Piperlyne is the journalist. I'm not. However, I have started using my little notes things, and Facebook has actually been beautiful for me because I sometimes will post things, and then when they pop up as memories, I go, wow, so that's where I was in 2016. All right. Like, here's one from 2016 that I think you might like. And I don't know, maybe I read this one already. Did I read about the discomfort, the Abraham? I think I just shared that with you. Did we do that on the radio?
I don't think so.
So this is from Abraham, and it says, anytime you have any physical discomfort of any kind, whether you call it emotional or physical pain within your body, it always, always means the same thing. I have a desire that is summoning energy, but I have a belief that is not allowing, so I've created resistance in my body. The solution, every single time, to releasing of discomfort or pain is the relaxation and the reaching for the feeling of relief. So, 4 years it's taken me, because I posted that as a little pin for myself, to recognize that when I get all uptight, I just need to release. Unclench the fist. Lower the shoulders. Breathe. And in those 3-4 steps, what was that, 3-4 steps? Awareness has come.
Right.
Because I've created the space. I've given a parking spot in my mind for those moments that happen where I go, wait, what is this really about? I could be just the human reaction. And let me tell you, this year I have. Mars and Aries retrograde. And even in that, I've had to stop myself and say, why such a visceral response?
Right.
That's my work.
Right.
Right? So I throw that out there. If you're in physical pain, if you're in emotional pain, if you're in mental pain, if you're in spiritual pain, if you have hate, fear, envy, anger, worry,
All of it.
all of it,
Stress, anxiety,
obsessiveness,
compulsiveness.
stop yourself and say, does this feel good to me? Do I want to continue to feel this way? And if not, ask myself, I'm going to ask myself to show me what I need that can be different. Notice I didn't say to make it different. We ain't making nothing. We're just changing the state of being within ourselves.
Yeah.
Because you can't get rid of the shadow. Did your shadow go anywhere?
Oh no, it's still there.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear, though, that they didn't come in like a wrecking ball. But I don't know, that might just be your shadow.
Well, I'm sure that I've had my fair share of wrecking balls and towers dropping and so on and so forth. And then just if I can add, just in addition to what you said before, because I feel like we're reaching wrap up, that space that Sonya has taught to give herself is, unbelievably powerful. And where you learn it is through meditation. Now, remember all those times I can't meditate, I suck at it, or I'm not good at it, or all I can do is 5 minutes. I tell you what, if all you can do is 5 minutes and you keep doing 5 minutes, you are creating space, which is exactly what Sonya is talking about. Creating that space between what is going on and what is your reaction. And in that space is where clarity and change comes from. I mean, Sonya is better at currently meditating than I am.
Not a lot. Not a lot.
But it's important. It's
is.
so important. And if you want to learn how to do that, my experience is the best way to learn it is to meditate.
Yes.
However you got it, whatever you can do.
And the whole concept of silent meditation is, I think I've learned, and it was a shadow issue for me and now it's not, is that I can meditate anytime, anywhere, anyhow. So I can be washing dishes, and if I've allowed my brain to get out of drive and go into neutral, I'm meditating. If I'm in the shower, and usually I take pretty quick showers, but if I wash my hair, and it takes a little longer because I got long hair, I'm in that shower, the water's running down on me, I'm massaging my scalp, I'm breathing, I'm just focused on that and nothing else, and then the information just comes, the awareness just comes, the release just happens, because it's not always about what comes in, sometimes it's about what needs to go out, and I can hold, myself real tight and tense, if I need to. Sometimes, you could call it focus. Sometimes it's just keep it together, man. It just kind of depends. But the thing that Jung says about the shadow is that it's 90% pure gold. And what he means is that there are many beautiful gifts that are offered to us by our shadow if we take the time to look for it. So, because the shadow contains some of our most important gifts and talents, artistic, sexual, competitive, innovative, intuitive, all of those things will be improved upon through this process of self-inquiry. And I have told people in the past, meditate for 1 minute. That Calm commercial that comes on TV, every time I see that on, I stop. All right, let's do that. 30 seconds, let's do it. Right? Because it's there. They're offering it. It's not a lot they offer on TV that I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds delightful. That's delightful. Yes, I will take that 30 seconds. Thank you. Instead of me turning the volume on mute because I don't want to hear what you're trying to sell me.
Right.
And I get that they're trying to sell a meditation app. I don't care. I'm taking advantage of that 30 seconds, watching that little thing go around. And it took a lot of years to be able to do that. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
And I mean, there are free apps to do it. You've got the timer on your phone. You can do it. You can choose music with no vocals.
Yeah, exercise. Go for a walk around the block.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, if you're into exercise, I mean, I know people who run and they're like, the only time my mind is quiet is when I run. And that's meditative. That is, all of that is, it is not just sitting on a pillow in lotus position with your palms up going, You can.
That's lovely too.
Absolutely, you
And
can.
doesn't have to be that way. There's no conditions or restrictions. Again, conditions and restrictions are part of that that self-denial.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just encouraging you find your own way.
Right, absolutely.
Right? Just like I had to find my own way. I've done lots of training, lots of studying, lots of learning. And in the end, what I've come to find is that, I'm like a Frank Sinatra song. I did it my way, which also reminds me. One last thing, and I know we're going a little wrong, but this was something that came to me the other morning when I woke up. It was Christmas morning. We had the little Christmas fire log on the TV playing the music.
Mm-hmm.
And Sinatra was singing a song, and it just, the most beautiful voice, just so beautiful. And I know he's just so, loved all around the world. Wasn't always the nicest guy.
No, talk about some shadow side.
Decidedly human.
Yes.
Undeniably human.
Absolutely.
He was.
Absolutely.
And so that's the last thing that I wanted to share. We have within us this amazing soul spirit, divine light, and in equal measure, we have this shadow human. It's what I feel. It's what I know. It's what I can touch. Less idealized self, if you will. I don't even know how to put it into terms. They are there equally. You can sing like an angel and be, a chauvinistic male. I won't, speculate on, rumors, but it was rumored that there were, connections or whatnot, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And so how he got there, how he attained that status, probably I would say is less than desirable. Certainly invoking and utilizing the shadow aspects to get what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that had to happen in order for him to give what he needed to give to the collective. So even though that was a bit convoluted, I might have to go back and edit that. My point was that you are beautiful and perfect and wonderful in every way, completely, wholly, totally, just as you are.
Mm-hmm.
So love all the bits and parts of yourself, good, bad, indifferent, beautiful and ugly,
Mm-hmm.
and let yourself be free.
You become complete and you become grounded. You're functional more so than you ever have been in a way you don't understand. You can't understand until you've reached that space, until you start experiencing it. And the power that is gained compassion-wise, and regardless of where we are, regardless of what we are doing, I am of the personal opinion that, man, we could use so much more compassion on this planet. And, it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
So, there you go.
There you go.
All right.
So that's just, it's a terrifying journey, but it also leads to illumination.
Oh, so much so. You can't not do this if your intention or your desire is to become an aware, conscious being. Mm-hmm. You have to do this.
You do. And I can say with complete certainty that I am the better for it. There's a lot of things that I've done along my path where I'm just like, yeah, just not quite sure about that. Of this, I am completely sure because it has been, for me, the one thing that has allowed me to find me.
Mm-hmm.
And as an empath, I had to cut through all the not me. Like, does it resonate with anyone to say, what are your goals 5 years from now, and you don't know until someone else says, well, in 5 years I want to be, and then you go, oh yeah, that sounds great.
I want to do that.
I want to do that
too.
too. So, part of that first part was, also in letting go of everyone else's,
Right.
so that I could then cling to my own. Was that shadow? I don't know. However, I can tell you where I sit today, it was a necessary piece that brought me to that illumination that has allowed for me to be okay with being too much, for knowing that I'm supposed to be too much in this world, because we need more. Too much. And if we didn't, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So there you have it.
There you go.
I hope that you all take advantage these last 5 days, 6 days of this year, to let it go. On the 29th, we've got new moon, which I probably will carry over to New Year's Day before I actually do anything, so that I can, again, I want to be clear, and I think we'll still be good a couple of days. Was that 2 days after, 3 days after? To continue the releasing, and then start creating the manifesting, the intentions, the resolutions for those of you that want to be resolute. 2020 was absolutely a golden shadow opportunity.
Oh yeah. 2020 was shadow.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
There are amazing things.
And the beauty in it is that we got through it together. We really did.
Here we are.
So I wish you all just a bright and beautiful and blessed New Year's Eve. And 2021 I'll leave to you.
I want to, however you experience or celebrate or pass the time from 2020 to 2021, I wish you love. We'll see you on the other side.
See you in 2021. I'm Sonya Lee.
And I'm Piperlyne, and this has been In My Experience.